My parents sold my lake house to pay for my sister's $150,000 wedding. They thought I'd smile and fade into the background, but what I sent them in the mail made their perfect little world crack wide open. Subscribe so you don't miss what's next. I found out over brunch, not a casual Sunday brunch, either Hannah's engagement brunch. The restaurant smelled like syrup and champagne, all white marble and glass chandeliers. Everyone was glowing with that fake Instagram happiness. James, the human beige sweater she was marrying, was in the middle of a toast about family sacrifices. I remember thinking he was probably talking about flower arrangements or his groomsmen taking time off work. Then my dad raised his mimosa and said, "Well, thanks to Audrey's wedding gift, this day is even more special." Everyone clapped. I blinked, my fork froze halfway to my mouth. My wedding gift. Mom reached across the table and patted my hand, the way you pat a toddler who dropped her ice cream. "So, sweetheart, the lake house, we sold it last week. The closing was yesterday. Now your sister can have the wedding of her dreams." I swear I felt my ears ringing. The sound of clinking glasses and soft jazz faded, and all I could hear was my own heartbeat. That house wasn't just wood and paint, it was the one place I could breathe. Grandpa Whitaker's summers on the dock, nights sketching by the water, the smell of cedar inside the attic. I used to sneak away from family drama and just exist there. And now gone. For a venue with chandeliers and a champagne wall, I watched my parents lean toward each other and laugh. Clinking glasses again. Mom added, "Thank you for the wedding present, honey." I smiled, my hands didn't shake, my voice didn't crack. "Oh sure, no problem. Check your mail when you get home." Their smiles froze for just a second. A flicker of confusion. They didn't know I'd already filed a property alert with the county clerk. They didn't know the Petersons, the sweet retirees who bought the house, were about to call them. And they definitely didn't know I'd been quietly gathering every document about that house for weeks, ever since Hannah started circling my inheritance like a vulture. I sliced my waffle in perfect squares, pretending nothing was wrong. Inside, my chest burned with the quiet rage of someone who's just been erased. The drive home felt like moving through syrup. My brain was loud, but the world outside my windshield was muffled, like I was underwater. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Family group chat. "Hannah, can't believe we're really doing this. Mom, thank you Audrey for being so generous. Couldn't do it without you. Dad, proud of both my girls. Family first." I stared at the screen until the light turned green and someone honked behind me. I didn't answer, I just drove, knuckles white on the wheel, every street light smearing into the next. When I finally got back to my apartment, I didn't even take off my shoes. Boxes from my half-finished renovation plans for the lake house were stacked against the wall. A folder of my sketches peeked out from under a pile of paint samples, a sketch of the dock at sunset. A blueprint for the kitchen remodel, notes in my handwriting, "Keep the cedar beams, Grandpa's favorite now." All of it was a joke. I opened my laptop and went straight to the county property portal. Fingers trembling, I typed the parcel number from memory. Search result: Whitaker Lake property transfer of ownership, new owners Robert Linda Peterson. A line of heat crawled up my neck. My name was gone. Just like that, I dialed Mom. She picked up on the second ring, her voice fake sweet. "Hi honey, did you see the engagement photos Hannah posted?" "She's glowing." "Yeah, quick question," I said, voice flat. "How do you sell the lake house without my signature?" A pause, then a laugh that made my stomach clench. "Oh Audrey, you know your father handled the paperwork. It's family property. Stop being dramatic." My jaw locked. "Family property doesn't mean you can forge my name." Her tone sharpened like a hidden blade. "Sweetheart, we raised you. That house wouldn't even be yours if we hadn't paid the taxes all those years. Sometimes family makes sacrifices. You'll understand one day." I hung up before I said something I couldn't take back. An hour later, my inbox pinged: automated county notification, property transfer complete. A def was attached. I opened it, my chest went cold. My signature, or something pretending to be it, sat neatly on a quitclaim deed. I hadn't written a capital L like that in years. My mother's hand, I realized. She used to sign my permission slips in elementary school. I stared at it until the edges of the screen blurred. I texted Sophia, my best friend since college. "Me, they sold the house. Without me, it's gone." "Sophia, what a how?" "Me, photo of the deed." "Sophia, Audrey, that's illegal. I'm coming over. Don't do anything stupid." When she arrived, I was sitting on the floor surrounded by rolled up sketches of the lake house. My hands were cold even though the heat was on. She crouched next to me, scanning the document. "This is a felony. You need a lawyer." Like yesterday, I stared at the ceiling. "They're gonna get away with it, Soph. They always do. They smile, the town loves them, and I'm the overreacting daughter again." She squeezed my shoulder. "Not this time. You have proof. Start with the county. If they filed fake paperwork, there'll be a trail." The words proof and trail stuck in my head like sparks catching on dry leaves. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of my apartment felt like the lake house calling to me, whispering that I'd let it down. By morning, I had a plan. I was going to find every scrap of evidence they touched. By the time the county clerk's office opened, I was already sitting in my car out front with an empty coffee cup and a stomach full of acid. The building was beige and quiet, the kind of place nobody notices until their life falls apart. Inside, fluorescent lights buzzed, and the air smelled like paper and toner. A clerk in a maroon cardigan looked up over half-moon glasses. Help you, my name is Audrey Whitaker. I need the full property file for parcel 4812L. The lake house. My voice shook on lake house, but I kept my chin up. She typed with slow, deliberate keystrokes. Photo it. I slid my driver's license across the counter, after a pause and some printer noises. She handed me a manila folder thick enough to feel like a brick. You can look at it here. Don't remove the originals. I found a corner table and opened the folder with sweaty hands. Quitclaim deed transferring the lake house from joint heirs to my parents alone. Dated 2 months ago. New sale contract between my parents and Robert Linda Peterson, finalized last week. Notarized signature Audrey L. Whitaker, looping L. Perfectly forged. My stomach turned to stone. I hadn't signed anything in 10 years with that L. The way the line flicked at the end, it was Mom. I flipped to the notary page. One name jumped out like a flare, Dorothy Matthews. I froze. Dorothy had been our neighbor at the lake for decades. She was the one who always brought me oatmeal cookies in summer. The one who called me Grandpa's shadow. If anyone knew what really happened, it would be her. I snapped photos of everything on my phone, my hands still trembling. Before I left, I asked the clerk a careful question. Hey, do you verify when someone signs a quitclaim deed? She shrugged. The notary does. We just file what we get. Outside, the cold air hit me like a slap. The world looked the same, cars passing, pigeons pecking, but my chest buzzed with a new electric anger. They hadn't just stolen my house, they'd erased me on paper. Like I was never part of my own family, I drove straight to the lake. The road twisted through trees until the water appeared, gray and glassy under the winter sky. My house, their house now, had a bright sold sign staked in the yard. The sight almost knocked the breath out of me. Memories hit like snapshots. Grandpa teaching me to bait a hook. Late night sketching on the porch. The smell of wet cedar after rain. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles ached. Dorothy's little blue house was next door. Her porch light was on. A soft yellow glow in the afternoon gloom. I climbed the steps, my legs heavy. Before I could knock, the door creaked open. Dorothy peeked out, surprise flickering into worry. Audrey Whitaker, I was wondering when you'd come. Her voice was soft, and something in my chest cracked. I stepped inside, inhaling the familiar smell of cinnamon and old wood. Every part of me wanted to cry, but I didn't. Instead, I laid the forged deed on her kitchen table. You notarized this. Her eyes widened behind her glasses. Her hands trembled as she adjusted them and squinted at the page. Your mother said you were traveling, that she had your permission. I believed her. She forged my signature, I said quietly. I never signed anything. Dorothy's face drained of color. She reached for a drawer, pulled out a slim notebook, and flipped pages with shaky fingers. I keep a log of every notarization just in case. She stopped at the date 2 months ago. Entry quitclaim deed witness signature by Elizabeth Whitaker, mother. No id provided. My pulse roared in my ears. No id, no proof. I met Dorothy's eyes. Would you testify to this if it came to it? She hesitated, glanced toward the lake like she expected my parents to emerge from the trees. If I have to, yes. But Audrey, your parents are well respected. People might not like that I helped you. The first Li, fragile as glass. I stepped back onto her porch, the wind biting my cheeks. The lake was silent, but in that silence, I swore I heard the crack of my family's perfect image beginning to split. The wind coming off the lake was sharp, slicing through my sweater as I stepped onto Dorothy Matthews's porch. My legs felt heavy, like every step carried the weight of the house I'd just lost. Before I could knock, the door creaked open. Dorothy peered out, her silver hair in a neat bun, and worry already clouding her soft blue eyes. Audrey Whitaker, I was wondering when you'd come. Her voice had that gentle tremor I remembered from childhood summers when she's called me in for oatmeal cookies. Something in my chest cracked, but I swallowed it down. She ushered me in with a cautious glance toward the lake, as if the water itself could carry secrets to my parents. Her kitchen smelled like cinnamon and dusted sugar, the same as it had when I was 10. I laid the quitclaim deed on her kitchen table. My hands were steady only because I forced them to be. You notarized this. Dorothy slid her glasses on, squinted at the page, and froze. Her fingers trembled against the paper. Your mother said you were traveling, she whispered as she said you gave permission. I believed her. She forged my signature, Dorothy. I never signed this. The color drained from her face. She opened a drawer and retrieved a slim leather notebook. I keep a log of every notarization, she murmured. Just in case. She flipped to a page dated 2 months ago. Entry quitclaim deed witness signature by Elizabeth Whitaker, mother. No id provided. The words blurred for a second before snapping back into focus. No id, no proof I was there. Would you testify to this if it came to it? My voice cracked on the last word. Dorothy hesitated, biting her lip. If I have to, yes. But Audrey, your parents are well respected. People might not like that I helped you. I nodded. My throat was tight, my heart pounding in my ears, as I stepped back outside. The lake stretched gray and endless, rippling under a wind that seemed to carry whispers. The sold sign in the yard mocked me, flapping in that same wind. I stood there for a moment, letting the chill bite into my skin. My family had erased me with a pen. But the lake still knew who I was. Dorothy's words followed me back to the car. People might not like that I helped you. I realized then that every ally I found would be one my parents would try to tear away. The first crack in their perfect facade had appeared, but I could already feel them circling. Ready to patch it with lies, Sophia showed up the next morning with 2 lattes and a look that said, "We're going to war." "Drink this first," she said, shoving the cup into my hand. "Then lawyer up. I did some research last night, and there's a real estate attorney downtown. Stephanie Miller, she's tough. No sugarcoating." My stomach was still in knots, but the caffeine burned a trail of shaky courage down my throat. Stephanie's office was on the 4th floor of a narrow building that smelled faintly of old carpet and printer ink. The waiting room was empty except for a potted plant that had seen better days. When she appeared, she was exactly the type Sophia promised: black blazer, sharp heels, eyes like she could dissect a lime midair. "Audrey Whitaker," she said, firm handshake already extended. I nodded and followed her into an office lined with neat folders and a single-frame diploma. She motioned for me to sit. "So," she said, flipping open her legal pad, "tell me everything from the start." I laid the forged quitclaim deed on her desk. My voice shook as I walked her through brunch. The county def, Dorothy's logbook, and the sold sign in the yard. When I finished, she leaned back, arms crossed. "Your parents forged your signature," she said bluntly. "That's fraud, potentially criminal. And if they sold without your consent, you have a civil claim for damages." But the word hung like a knife. "But the Petersons bought in good faith. The court isn't going to take the house from them. Your fight is with your parents, not the buyers." I nodded, even though my chest ached. I knew that already. This wasn't about kicking sweet old Robert and Linda Peterson out of their retirement dream. This was about making my parents pay for erasing me. Stephanie started scribbling a list: original will from Grandpa, my driver's license for signature verification, Dorothy's notarization log, any samples of my handwriting from the last 10 years. "Get me all this," she said. "And Audrey, do not confront your parents yet. If they know you're building a case, they'll start covering tracks." Her words buzzed in my ears like an alarm I didn't want to hear. But when I got home that evening, they were already there. Mom leaned against the hallway wall outside my apartment like she was waiting for a surprise party to start. Dad stood with his arms crossed, face tight. "We need to talk about your little county clerk stunt," Dad said, a voice low and cold. I didn't move from the doorway. "You forged my signature and stole my house. Talking won't change that." Mom's smile was brittle, like porcelain about to crack. "Sweetheart, this isn't the way. You're making things worse for yourself." I laughed once, sharp and humorless. "Worse than losing the only thing Grandpa left me, than being erased off my own deed." Dad's voice rose. "Watch your tone. This is a family matter, and you are dragging outsiders into it. Outsiders are the only ones keeping me sane." I shot back. The hallway felt suddenly smaller, like the walls were leaning in. Mom's voice softened, losing control. "You're overreacting. Everyone thinks so. Don't make this uglier than it needs to be." I realized then that Stephanie was right. This wasn't just a fight over property. This was war over narrative, and my parents had the first strike. They had the social army, the family reputation, the sympathy, but I had something they didn't expect: proof. A plan, and a refusal to stay silent. They didn't even wait for me to invite them in. Mom swept past me into my apartment with her usual perfume cloud of lilies and soft vanilla. Dad followed, closing the door behind him like it was a cage. "Audrey, honey, we need to clear the air," Mom said, perching on my couch as if she owned it. Her voice dripped with practiced patience. I stayed near the door, arms crossed. "You forged my signature and sold my house, so that's the air." Her smile twitched. Dad's voice cut through the room, low and sharp. "You're being dramatic. It's family property, and frankly, you weren't using it." I let out a short, bitter laugh. "You sold the last thing Grandpa left me so Hannah could have a donut wall and a champagne tower." Mom's lips thinned, Dad's face darkened. "You embarrassed your sister with that county stunt. Do you want the whole town thinking we're criminals? If the shoe fits." I pulled out my phone and hit record. "Say it again. Tell me how you stole from me." Mom's expression cracked into shock. "You wouldn't dare." Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. "Sophia," I answered on speaker. "Hey, I'm with my parents." Dad lunged to snatch the phone and ended the call in one swipe. "You need to stop dragging outsiders into this. It's a family matter," he said, voice dangerously calm. A chill ran through me. This wasn't just gaslighting, they were isolating me. They wanted me alone. 2 minutes later, a text buzzed and "Sophia, Steph just called. She's backing out. Says this is too messy for her firm." I stared at the screen, numb, my first legal ally gone. "See," Mom said softly, like she was comforting a sick child. "Even your friends think you're overreacting. Let's drop this and enjoy Hannah's big day." I cowed an answer. My throat felt tight, my ears hot. Dad leaned closer. "Audrey, if you keep pushing this, you'll ruin yourself. Family is everything. Don't throw it away." I realized then that they weren't just playing defense, they were dismantling my world piece by piece. My lawyer, my best friend, and next, probably my job or my lease. The room felt too small. The walls pressing in. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I just stood there silent, letting them believe they'd won this round. Inside, a new coldness settled into my chest. If they wanted me alone, I'd learn how to fight alone. By the next morning, my phone felt like a weapon against me. It buzzed before I even opened my eyes. Family group chat, Facebook tags, and messages from numbers I didn't recognize. "Aunt Kelly, Audrey, why are you attacking your parents over a wedding? Uncle Peter, your mom is heartbroken. Just stop. Hannah, I'm begging you. Don't ruin this for me." I scrolled until my vision blurred. Every word said the same thing. You're the problem. Then an email came in from my landlord. Audrey, your father called. He expressed concerns about your stability and the potential for legal chaos in the building. We will need to discuss your lease renewal. My blood ran cold. They weren't just taking my house, they were trying to take my home. I called Sophia, my last friend, still answering my calls. She picked up, but her voice was tight. Hey, my mom's nervous. She doesn't want our family dragged into legal drama. She thinks maybe you should just work this out with your parents. The words hit like a punch. Sophia, you said you had my back. I do, I need to keep some distance until this settles. When the line went dead, the apartment felt like a tomb. No family. No lawyer. No best friend. I sat on the floor surrounded by my lake house sketches. The dock at sunset. The cedar beams. The little window Grandpa called our secret door. They were relics of a world I'd just lost. My phone buzzed again. A photo from Mom Hannah in her wedding dress. Captioned, worth it, Unc. I don't remember throwing the phone, but it cracked against the wall. By evening, the air in my apartment felt heavy, like it was pressing me into the floor. Even the fridge hum felt accusatory. My parents had built the perfect narrative, the unstable daughter throwing a tantrum. And the worst part, people believed them. I wrapped my arms around my knees, staring at the shards of my phone screen on the floor. I'd lost everything that tethered me to the world. Then, through the blur of tears, I noticed something under the coffee table, Grandpa's old sketchbook. It had slipped out from the pile of plans I'd made for the lake house. I wiped my face and pulled it into my lap. The cover smelled faintly of cedar and graphite. Most pages were floor plans, dock angles, notes about beams and water lines. Then one page made my breath hitch. A hand-drawn map of the basement with a tiny note in his blocky handwriting. Spare key will copy behind panel, south wall. My heart thudded. A flicker of something I hadn't felt in days, hope. I whispered into the empty apartment, Grandpa, you brilliant man. If my parents wanted to erase me, they forgot one thing the house itself remembered. The next morning, frost clung to the edges of my windshield, and my stomach buzzed with a mix of fear and adrenaline. I parked down the road from the lake house, engine off. Letting the cold bite through my gloves, the lake lay still under a pale gray sky. The sold sign flapped in the wind like it was mocking me. I checked the Petersons' driveway, empty, perfect. I grabbed my old backpack and crept to the basement door tucked behind the azalea bushes. The metal handle was icy, stiff with disuse. When it gave, the door groaned loud enough to make my heart jump. Inside, dust swirled in weak light from the tiny windows. The air smelled like damp wood and forgotten summers. My boots crunched on old leaves as I counted panels along the south wall. Just like Grandpa's sketch 1, 2, 3, 4. My hands trembled as I wedged a flathead screwdriver into the seam. The wood resisted, then popped loose with a soft crack. Behind it, a metal box sat wedged between beams. Rust had eaten at the edges, but it was still locked tight. I pulled it free and set it on the floor. My fingers were clumsy on the latch. When it finally clicked open, my chest tightened. Inside, Grandpa's original will leaving the lake house to me, and only me. Polaroids of me on the dock, Audrey, Summary 6 scrawled in his handwriting. A small USB drive, labeled in blocky pen, Whitaker House keys. I didn't even know if the USB still worked, but holding it felt like touching a lifeline. The faint crunch of tires on gravel snapped me out of the moment. I froze. A familiar voice floated through the thin basement window. Robert, check the back. She could've been here, Mom. My stomach turned to ice. I flicked off my flashlight and crouched under the stairs, heart slamming against my ribs. The basement door creaked open, boots on wood. A slice of daylight cut through the dim. See nothing, Dad's voice. She's not stupid enough to come here. Don't underestimate her, Mom hissed. She's always been dramatic. Their footsteps creaked overhead. I waited, lungs burning, until the door shut and their voices faded toward the driveway. I didn't waste a second. I bolted out the old cellar doors that faced the woods, boots slipping on frost, backpack clanking with the weight of my family's lies. By the time I reached my car hidden under the trees, my hands were shaking so hard I could barely get the keys in the ignition. I didn't start it right away. I just sat there, clutching the steering wheel, staring at the lake. I had proof now, real physical proof. The will, the photos, the USB, pieces of my voice that my parents couldn't erase. And in that moment, for the first time since brunch, I felt something hot and fierce spark in my chest. Not hope, fire. I didn't drive straight home. My nerves were too raw, and my hands shook so hard on the wheel, I could barely keep to my lane. Instead, I pulled into a quiet park 2 towns over and parked under a bare oak tree. Heart still thudding against my ribs, the backpack sat in the passenger seat like a co-conspirator. Inside was everything my parents thought they'd buried: Grandpa's original will, naming me the sole heir, Dorothy's logbook photo, proof that no id was shown. The small USB drive, labeled in his handwriting, Whitaker House keys. I ran my thumb over the letters. Grandpa's handwriting always had a little wobble in the K's. I'd forgotten how comforting it was to see. I drove to Stephanie Miller's office just before closing. She buzzed me in with one glance at my face. Audrey, what happened? I dumped the metal box, the will, and the USB on her desk. My parents were in the house today. They're hunting me. But I have this. Stephanie's eyes sharpened as she opened the will. Oh my God, this is ironclad. And the original, this is a legal nuke. I slid the USB toward her. Grandpa labeled it keys. Maybe there's more proof. She plugged it into her laptop. The old drive word and clicked. A folder appeared, property records, emails, and videos. We opened a video file first. Grainy footage filled the screen. The kitchen of the lake house. There was my mom, leaning over the quitclaim deed. My father stood beside her. Make the L loop here, he said. She used to sign like that. Mom smiled and smoothed the paper. Then Dad kissed her temple and said, "Perfect. Audrey will never know." My stomach twisted so hard I gripped the edge of Stephanie's desk. Hearing them plot my erasure in their cheerful voices was worse than I imagined. Stephanie's voice was low, almost reverent. "This isn't just forgery. This is premeditated fraud. We have them. We backed up the files 6 ways: my email, Stephanie's cloud, 2 separate encrypted USBs, and 1 copy on her office desktop. I wasn't losing evidence twice. When I left her office, the winter air felt sharper but lighter. My backpack no longer felt like a burden, it felt like a weapon. That night, I didn't go home. I drove aimlessly with the heat blasting, the USB warm in my pocket like a pulse. A text came from an unknown number. "Stop before you regret it. Family comes first." I didn't need to guess. They knew I had the truth now. I parked under a street impulse in a quiet lot and whispered to myself, "You wanted me silent, but you forgot who taught me to keep records." Grandpa's voice felt like it was with me in the hum of the engine. The lake house had remembered. 2 weeks later, I walked into the county courthouse with Stephanie at my side and the metal box in my hands. I'd been here once for jury duty, but this time, my heart thudded like I was walking into battle. My parents were already seated at the other table. Mom dabbed her eyes with a tissue, mascara smudged just enough to look tragic but dignified. Dad's jaw was tight, his posture perfect. Hannah and James were behind them, holding hands like this was a family drama they were starring in. The judge, a stern man with salt and pepper hair, flipped through our file. "Mr. and Mrs. Whitaker," he said, "you are accused of property fraud, forgery, and interference with inheritance rights. Do you have anything to say?" Mom sniffled. We just wanted the wedding to be perfect." Audrey misunderstood. Stephanie rose smoothly. "Your Honor, if I may, the video speaks louder than their excuses." We plugged in the USB. Grainy footage filled the screen. My mom signing the deed in my name, my dad coaching her make the L loop here. "Audrey used to sign like that." His voice, clear as day, perfect. "Audrey will never know." The room went dead silent. Even the bailiff leaned forward. Mom's face drained of color. Dad's shoulders sagged, but he still tried to speak. "We were just trying to handle family business privately by committing forgery and selling your daughter's property without consent." The judge snapped. "You not only violated civil law, you've opened yourself to criminal investigation." Hannah started crying and James whispered something in her ear. For once, nobody looked at me like the problem. The ruling was swift. The Petersons kept the lake house. They were innocent buyers. My parents owed me full market value plus damages, to be paid immediately. The evidence was referred for criminal investigation for forgery and fraud. Mom tried to reach for me in the hallway afterward, her voice breaking. "Sweetheart, we love you. Everything we did was for family." I stepped back. "You love each other. You just wanted me silent. But I have a voice now." Her hand hung in the air as I walked past. That night, I drove to the lake one last time. The Petersons had already moved in. Warm light glowed from the windows, and laughter floated out to the dock. I parked by the water and pulled Grandpa's sketchbook from my bag. The page with the basement panel flapped in the wind. I traced his notes with my finger and whispered, "I kept your house safe the only way I could." For the first time in weeks, the weight in my chest eased. Voice, silence, legacy, they had tried to take all 3, and yet here I was whole, burning, and free. Thanks for watching. Hit subscribe to check out more stories on my channel.